like the first point on there says RaaS or ransomware as a service, kind of was born out of this idea. Like the crux of all of this is I'm a malicious actor. I have access to someone else's network. I've done some effort. I want some reward for it, right? I want to be able to monetize my access. And ransomware fits that bill pretty much since CryptoLocker, that harmony of cryptocurrency, being able to take payments without having to go through usual banking and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The ransomware as a service model grew out of it because they wanted to be able to scale. Ransomware developers, they develop the malware, they're really good at that side of it, they understand how to do the negotiations and they understand how to set up the infrastructure for it. And the bottleneck for them for getting as much or as many victims as possible is if they are on the hook for going out and getting the initial access, moving laterally through the network, evading all the defenses that are in place, encrypting stuff, that's like their bottleneck. So they came up with the ransomware as a service model, which basically says, we're going to recruit affiliates, sometimes call them pen testers, because they want to make it sound more legitimate. But yeah, so they want to recruit affiliates who will do all that legwork for them. The affiliates get to keep 80% if there's a payout, the ransomware company will keep 20%. I mean, that varies, there's competition around between these different RaaS groups as to what that split is, but yeah, it's usually sort of like 30-70 or 20-80, or yeah, vice versa.
So they've managed to create a model which is actually very successfully abstracting what they do, i.e. they're very good at developing this software, from the model that they're using to deliver it, and enabling them to benefit from the extortion that they're creating. So yeah, effectively, this is kind of extortion as an industry that we're looking at as well.
It's like specialization, right? Like they started off back in the old day, they were a startup, they're now getting into the sort of like more mature business model.
And that's an interesting point, because one thing we do have to think about with these groups is they have a reputation to think of, in the same way that the company that you work for has a reputation and they will want to be reviewed well, they'll want to have good things on Google said about them and 5 stars everywhere. It's the same with the ransomware groups as well. They don't want to develop a bad reputation. They want it to be seen that, yes, they do decrypt. Yes, they do have a great support service. They will provide information to prove that they're doing what they're doing. So as much as they're being bad, they want to have a reputation to keep their business going, to make more people want to partner with them to do this. So, you know, this is a very, very interesting business model that we are seeing come out. But what it also does is brings us to the third point. As ransomware has become more common, organizations have realized this and they've started to build strategies around, okay, so how can we recover from ransomware before it happens? How can we be aware of this? What information can we have? Because that's allowing them to be able to pay out less often. Remember, paying out on ransomware isn't just the damage from paying out, there's also the reputational damage as well. Places around the world where we have regulatory requirements for reporting on an attack that's affected data, things like GDPR, for example, that causes reputational damage if it's listed that actually a number of records were breached. So they don't want to do it in the first place. So this not paying out has become quite an interesting area, and it's something that the attackers have started to look at when they're developing new tactics of how they're going to perform their attacks.
And yeah, I think you can talk about the defensive technologies are getting better. So at the point at which encryption starts happening, things can block that quite quickly. So you might not have business processes impacted so much. Like when it really hit people back in the old days, and where it hits like a lot of healthcare and educational facilities, is that the business processes they rely on aren't necessarily as well protected as some more enterprise type businesses. If you can't attack their business processes, then me as an attacker, how do I still leverage money out of you? This comes back to the middle point of business of extortion. You might have sensitive data or you might have embarrassing data. What's your value on that? Like, I can go and release it unless you pay me. How much do you think it's worth? We think it's worth this much. Get into a negotiation. That's kind of where it's at.